was 2016, maybe 17 when the roundabouts were done.
Okay. So
And, yeah.
not new, but newer. Was the condition of those better or are those also on the same trajectory as the others?
Kind of the same. The north roundabout has a plant that wasn't even planted in there that's kind of populating. There's sumac in the middle of those roundabouts, which I've seen kind of purposely put in roundabouts before, but that was not on the plan. And so kind of that same, that Catmint, Carl Forrester, majority of those are still there. The other plants are struggling with little blue stem in the roundabouts, which that one should do well as well, but you can tell that they're starting to lose ground. Kind of that annual replacement has opened them up. And so the roundabout we went and looked at, Goodhue, is one alternative where we can stop with the formal planting and go to more of a turf grass and then just kind of mow that. It's a total different aesthetic, but it's a total different maintenance regime as well. So that's kind of some of the decision we want to consider.
So in terms of what went wrong, it wasn't necessarily the plant selection. Is it more of the maintenance plan wasn't there that every year we're doing the 10 to 20% that you preference? I mean, is that part of the missing, let's not do that?
Yeah, that's the hunch, and I would say that's pretty normal for infrastructure projects. You plant it's a road project first, and then the planting happens, and then everybody moves on to the next road project.
So Dave, I had inquired last fall about just mowing that. And there was some question whether that was our responsibility, MnDOT. Did we determine it is our responsibility, right? Is that?
So I think there was, there was some confusion because for the first 4 or 5 years, we saw MnDOT staff out there weeding and doing stuff. So I think it was kind of assumed within Public Works that it was MnDOT was maintaining it, which was incorrect. And, you know, from when they stopped doing it until lately, I'm sure they were losing plantings before that too. But that's kind of why we included them in this study too. I know that wasn't the top priority, but hey, if we're going to talk about this, let's at least try to get a plan or at least know what we want to do with them as well.
I think we're going to get how many more roundabouts in the next couple of years in town?
Yeah, well, why not? So the Goodview one and the one up by Headwaters were switched to turf after the ones on 97 and 61 there had the landscape planning. Just with all the, that was kind of about the same time when all Lake and Broadway were kind of really starting to fall apart, and you know, it would have been the same agreement that we would have been taking over that maintenance, you know, of all them as well. So that's, I believe, the Fenway 97 one, that one's supposed to come in, 97 will be disturbed as well.
We're putting one at 11 as well.
Yeah.
What's that percent?
I think that one's all going to be concrete, isn't it? Because it's
Just slow.
smaller, yeah.
You're going to be roundabouts with the highway project.
It won't be any of ours, so we want to Greenway and Highway, but that'll be Wyoming.
So I think the only other place we've talked about it is at 50th and Highway 61. Potentially roundabout. The county just got money to start that study project.
So the question came up on what the plants were. In the summary table, the bottom section are the planted species that were planted originally, and then kind of color coded for, this was kind of my, I won't say grading, but just kind of evaluation of all the systems and the components, if trees were missing, if weeds were present. But in the median species, the green are present, yellow is so-so present, red didn't survive. So you can see the continuity of the reedgrass across and the catmint. Daylily, like I said, was in there. Some of the shrubs, barberry, chokeberry, honeysuckle didn't survive. And so this is kind of a quick way to just see what did work. We'll assume all on its own, kind of without the irrigation for now. And then all of these, I believe, would succeed fine if replanted and irrigated. And that probably doesn't have to be irrigated with the intensity of turf grass, like the inch every week, more of kind of weather dependent and just keeping them moist a little bit more than they were getting. And as we were looking at the mulch and kind of the irrigation assessments, we saw that the majority of the systems are not on right now. Some of them need repair before they can function again, but the bones of the systems are there, other than like that big one on 7th Street that's broken and would need a long repair. Then we also looked for some of those other issues. Issues doesn't mean bad things, but like that fence tipping, the stormwater idea on 7th Street, and then kind of with the roundabouts, really didn't see anything outside of those. It's just kind of a vegetation preference and kind of willingness to invest in those improvements. So before we recommended any changes, I gathered some photos from other projects, other medians around the metro, around the state as I've traveled and worked on these projects, just to kind of compare how does Forest Lake look with some other projects. This is a previous median project. Christine and I worked on this in Lake Elmo, and we went from a very sporadic native planting to a very intentional block planting with kind of these concrete ribbons on the edge just to have a little maintenance buffer from curb to plantings. And this was one of those prime plantings that took out very well. It was irrigated and maintained. So you can see the daylilies in the foreground survived. And then I think it was a coneflower and then the Carl Forster grass and then the catmint in between the two chunks of Carl Forster. So the exact same kind of plant species that were originally planted on Forest Lake medians. So the good news is you're already where we had to get to on that project. Balsam Lane in Dayton, instead of concrete maintenance strips, we did turf grass. That was all irrigated underground, kind of drip emitters, so that we could run the turf grass more than the native plantings, knowing that once we got these native plants established, we didn't have to water them as much, kind of like we talked about before. Again, that block planting would mulch to kind of help with the weed control on the front. But with the goal that eventually the wood mulch maybe went away just because the plants were so robust and kind of filled all those voids, so the weeds didn't have an opportunity. Engler Boulevard at Chaska, very similar to Forest Lake. The trees planted in the median, the block plantings, same species. You can see the tall Carl Forster grass. One thing they did different or a little more often was they broke up the plantings with concrete panels so that it wasn't all planting. There were slabs of concrete in between the plantings. And that's going to be something we'll talk about for some of the ideas, kind of input from Public Works for various reasons to kind of maintain some of those amenities. But just like all the other plantings, you can see there's gaps starting to form. The maintenance isn't being maintained here. And then this is a very much more simple planting where they relied more on rock mulch. Instead of concrete panels and kind of maintenance strips, they used river rock all the way up to pretty good cobble size, not quite basketball size, but from fist to a little bit bigger. And then they really focused their plantings on the Carl Forster grass. I like this photo because you can see the weeds popping up in the rock mulch too.
Is that hard to maintain?
It's a little easier if you're willing to spray the weeds. You know where you can spray
Yeah.
on that rock mulch versus having the hand weed. But
When you say if you're willing to spray the weeds, is part of that like just how do you feel about using?
yes, yep. And then if you spray and then leave the plants, then you have dead things there until they fall over and kind of decay off. So it's all about how pristine and maintained you want the landscape to look. But, so even with the simplistic plan, there's maintenance, and I think that's kind of the take-home message is really this maintenance needs to be ongoing. And if you want to proceed with a refresh project, you're gonna have to anticipate and plan for that maintenance. Whether that's staff or subcontracted, it's time, staff, budgets, kind of big decisions. And then another example of kind of a rock mulch heavy planting, this one's brand new, so probably in the last year, so it looks great. Because we haven't had time yet, they'll come. So kind of summarizing those precedence options, we just listed them as features, and then we started to lay out what that maintenance would look like, kind of the recommended to keep things looking well maintained. Everything from taking out all the plantings and just concrete in the medians, which I've seen that done in cities. It gives it a very hard visual though. It's very concrete scape, but your maintenance is pretty minimal. You end up sweeping that once or twice a year just to get the debris and the sand and accumulations, any car parts that fell off and ended up in there, just kind of getting those all out. Kind of the next level up of kind of giving it something green is the turf grass, the entire median. You can see the maintenance activities jump from 1 to 5. And those have to occur on differing frequencies. Mowing, irrigating, fertilizing, herbiciding, just like any other lawn. And then being in the street condition, you have to repair. There's gonna be nicks and damage from snow removal, just the nature of our climate. And then kind of compounding on that would be adding a concrete strip around the median perimeter. I like that because it's a visual cue, like, okay, we're making this, it's like having a border between lawn and a foundation planting around the house. It's kind of a crisp, like this is intentional, this is where we're going to planting. Good news is those concrete strips exist pretty much around all the medians right now in Forest Lake, so that might be kind of the free amenity moving forward. Otherwise, like that one example, the Dayton, we did turf instead of concrete. That was just that city's preference, and kind of they didn't want the concrete there. So we still gave a formal edge just through a planting instead of material. You could do wood mulch, kind of continuing to do wood mulch. That's kind of the recommendation if we do these block plantings. Like I said, the goal is to have the plants do the weed control versus the mulch. But if you're not getting that, that wood mulch does need to be maintained, and then it needs to be removed and replaced every so many years. Dave and I were kind of bickering through email on how frequent that happens. We'll say 6 to 8 years, kind of realize. And the rock mulch, as you saw, that still is not weed-free. Even if you put barriers between the dirt and the rock, you will get organic accumulation, and weeds are great at grabbing that accumulation in the soil. The block plantings, going back to the original design, is plans are already here, so it's really easy for us to kind of look at that, how many are missing, what would it take to redo that. And then one option or feature is to think about reducing some of the plantings. Maybe it's more than the city wants, more than the city is willing to maintain. There's ways we can strategically reduce those plantings, still get the same effect, but just kind of be a little more strategic in where we focus efforts and kind of maintenance in the future. So the design options, we've done all this work, so everybody's like, okay, so what are we really gonna do? And that's kind of where we get stuck a little bit, and we want input is just, here's a couple options. We could just restore everything back to the original design, kind of maintain that intent, maintain that aesthetic. That's something we can figure out. It's probably one of the most expensive options, because at this point it's a very big reset. Like we said, some of those irrigation systems need some repairs. We're gonna end up taking out the wood mulch. we can definitely save the plants we can. It's not like we're pulling all the trees out just because we said refresh. Like those would stay and we'd work around kind of the surviving landscape. Second option was reduce the original design. And this was something that came up several times. I just started hand sketching some ideas in some of the areas. It's not necessarily mean this is the area. But in this case, adding these concrete kind of removing the landscape and paving that with concrete. These are the banner poles on the 19th Street median. And that was something that Public Works expressed that has a benefit because when they have to replace those banners or do anything on those poles, it gives them a better place to park out of traffic. They can get up in there without damaging any of the landscaping. There is some precedence of this happening throughout some of the other medians. You know, and one of the fun things, we do all these design plans and we do the installation and then the highway comes and starts sticking all their street signs and like warnings and stuff. And then it's like, okay, why is this growing in the middle of all the car forests there once, you know? And so sometimes for visibility, maybe those landscape plans plants don't make sense anymore. That would be an area where we might want to concrete that over just so that that sign gets the visibility it needs for safety, navigation, directions. And doing this kind of strategically will help kind of bring down some of that maintenance, time and cost moving in the future.
Do we have an option for irrigation? If we wanted to replace all irrigation, do we have, is that an option? Or are there places because of projects or, for example, did you say one of those stretches was 5 blocks of irrigation line?
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to replace that, so is there an option for us to scale that appropriately but still have irrigation?
So 19th Street one, I-35 and 19th, they had cut the line off and buried it. We brought it back up, hooked it up to the city water line and turned it on, and everything came on except for one head. And staff was told before my time that it never worked. So that one works, which we assumed when we did the original estimate that didn't work. So that one works. 12 is the same one that goes to that tree thing. That whole irrigation is shot. At least the main line. You don't know if the heads are salvageable. You don't, but you have to run all the main line. It wouldn't make any sense to run an irrigation line down to those 3 honey locusts. You'd spend thousands of dollars to irrigate one little spot. The between 4th and Broadway and Lake Street area, there's water available everywhere because we run hanging baskets, so we know that all the zones have water. It's just that when we try turning on the zones, we start losing water. So there's breaks in the line somewhere in the actual irrigation. So they're good to the baskets, which is a good thing. The zones work. It's just it takes some work to try to get it up and running. So I'd say out of all of them, 12 is in the worst shape. That one would be pretty much a full. You'd have to plan on having a full rebuild on that.
Two more options to go. Option 3 is kind of just an alternative design altogether. So 7th Street, I already mentioned, rather than trying to run irrigation those 5 blocks, maybe we just abandon the irrigation and see if there's a partnership with the watershed or some sort of demonstration project to do a green infrastructure project. Let's grab some of the stormwater that's available coming down the curb line, do a curb cut, put a pre-treatment device just like the rain garden in front of City Hall, and then what we can do is remove soil in between those existing honey locust trees, replace that with a rock structure so the void space is filling with the stormwater to help irrigate those trees off to the side. There wouldn't be a depression, it wouldn't be a swale like in the front of City Hall. It would look, if anything, it could look like rock mulch, or you can keep that structural rock down and do a soil and like a turf grass over the top so it's not even really visible. But you just think of like it's a storage cistern underground, just compromise it with rock. As a way of like, well, let's not spend on irrigation, let's see if we can do some sort of infiltration practice instead. And then around the Lake Street area, I noticed, it's just me, I'm a symmetry guy, and so I noticed like on the south of the road, there was a raised bed planter, it's just wood mulch right now. To the north, there is no raised bed planter, there's like one little sliver, but it doesn't reflect, it's not a mirror image, and so I'm like, oh, what if we pull some of that over here? And Dave and the guys are like, well, you know, what if we expanded this parking lot? Made some other opportunities, like we did the parking lot, we improved the landscape, kind of balanced that out. So there's, you know, the landscape architect in me is off running, you know, the designs already, but there's some things we can do that isn't just a full restoration back to the original design. And then option 4 is to remove the enhanced landscape and replace everything with concrete or turf. Not saying that's the direction we're going, just laying that out as an option. Or at least strategically in places. I mentioned the little kind of key between the lanes around the roundabouts. Those are very small landscape plantings. Some of them were like as big as 2 of these tables, you know, to irrigate, maintain a system. So that's all pipes going under the roads and wires and kind of maintaining all that. None of those plantings really survived, and I kind of question if they should, just from a pedestrian kind of walking through. Think of that tall Carl Forster grass. You know, I'm tall, so everybody's going to see me walking through it, but you know, you have a child going through there, could surprise somebody in the cars. You know, just kind of that crosswalk.
Roadways are already dangerous enough.
Yeah, those crosswalks are horrible.
Oh, yeah.
Noticed that during the tour, we were kind of really timing and we were wearing the visibility vests and shirts, kind of like still, I was like, all right, go. So maybe it's not a all or nothing, but maybe it is kind of, it's, you know, that part of that strategic reduction might be, let's just take out some of these small areas, especially this roundabout, since it is so busy.
Dave, maybe you recall this, maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but it seems like along Broadway, there used to be a lot of turf, and then a couple of years ago, we replaced it because the turf was not surviving. Does that ring a bell? And we put it with the colored concrete?
That was right before I had started, they ripped all the grass out and then they put that colored concrete in and replaced it pretty much all the way from 12 all the way downtown. Yeah.
So you're saying do more of that as it comes in, is just replace that with concrete then in those smaller areas?
Yep, especially around kind of this roundabout. If we want to do that in boulevards, you know, that's another big decision, but that is an option. We did note that a lot of the turf grass in those boulevards are pretty weed dominant. So if there was a refresh project, that might be to remove all that existing sod, replace, keep trying the latest, greatest, MnDOT salt tolerant kind of sod, and see if that does better. But at this point, I'd say it's kind of a loss as far as is it turf grass? Not really. Can we keep mowing and make it look green like it is turf grass? Yeah, you know, it's just short weeds. But so many decisions, so many options.
I want to use that the next time I get a
We
call.
dominant.
It looks like turf grass, it's just short weeds.
The short weeds.
And so kind of just summarizing those options, started looking at kind of recommendations, kind of here, maybe this is where this fits, here's maybe where this fits, kind of taking out some of those small plantings. I'm definitely interested in that stormwater, kind of the tree trench on 7th Street. It's just kind of a passion of mine, kind of integrating stormwater wherever we can. And then kind of starting to come towards kind of a hybridized plan versus like it's just going to be one thing or the other thing throughout the city. And then talked with Dave, kind of shared the those amenities or kind of those little options, like if we just concrete things over, and started to get kind of public works feedback on, you know, that's the worst idea, we're never going to maintain something like that, or we're willing to do that, and kind of this is what we think it's going to take. And, you know, just identifying things that are gonna take more or less, and just trying to understand, because ultimately, like I've been talking about tonight, maintenance is a guarantee. It's something that's gonna have to happen if you really wanna pursue kind of enhancing that landscape, restoring that landscape. And so, just wanna be really, really clear about that. Like, we could refresh it, and it'll look great for a couple of years, but we could end up back here if there's no commitment.
We really don't have a dollar and cents kind of situation here too. I mean, it's hard to pin down exactly how much money is gonna be spent on each one of these different options and.
That'd be the next step.
and-
Yep,
Okay, well,
yep, tonight, no, I don't have the dollars figured out yet for these options.
but Dave is a big part of this too, because they're the ones that maintain this stuff, so I sure value his opinion on this, so.
And that's what the last two slides are, right?
Yep.
That's Dave's opinions on the maintenance
Yep,
aspects.
it's his column on the right is
The
kind
last
of his input on behalf of Public Works, and kind of like the second to bottom line, reducing some of the planting areas with concrete panels, you know, if it's for maintenance of those banner poles or just to eliminate some of the small areas, kind of that, you know, needing to maintain those areas, kind of get his buy-in on that. And so Public Works, Dave and crew are very much part of this kind of exercise. And so,
I didn't realize you had the slide up there, so
sure.
it's helpful.
Kind of the next question gets into like, well, how much does it cost? And so kind of the goal of tonight's workshop is really to lay this out and to see if there's any strong feelings to say we're not going to consider that, or we do want to consider all of it. And what we've done is we go back and we start looking at the cost of these options for these different areas, including the cost of the maintenance, you know, talking Dave and the crew of how much can you guys handle, like what are you realistically going to take on versus we need to contract out, and kind of work on kind of that level of information to kind of go to the next level of, you know, is it as much of a financial decision and commitment as kind of the aesthetics of, we know we can get this, you know, for this cost. And so that's kind of takes us to the end. Didn't anticipate we're going to make a solid decision tonight. We can if you want, but just kind of looking for that feedback on likes, dislikes, or thoughts, kind of reactions on those 4 design options. If there's any strong preferences, we'll only kind of focus in on areas that the city's interested in exploring. If it's not enough yet, like I said, we can start doing cost analysis, including like, well, we know there was, making up a number, 10,000 plants in this median, to replant those and to replace 10 to 20% every year. We can start running costs on kind of that high level, you know, including the irrigation repair. And really, this block is broken these 2 ways, and it would cost this, or only the main broken, it would cost this.
Just, can you go back to a couple slides where it had your chart that kind of talked about all of them? Maybe that'd be a good thing a little bit further back. One more. Well, here could kind of make some recommendations or comments just to kind of maybe help give council a start.
Yeah. Is there a question?
What was the question? Oh, do we have, and if we don't have, are we at the point where we need to designate landscaping like by zone, by like type of thoroughfare or type of street, right? So that what we might do on a small street, you know, that is less heavily trafficked, less visible versus, you know, just get to a scale that is, that's a tier 1 design, this is a tier 2, or the, you know, the tier 3 would be what we would do in a, you know, kind of more premier thoroughfare, heavily visible areas.
I was saying the same thing, so not that I want to get off topic, but I mean, what is headwaters, those islands, what's the design out there?
So, when it was part of Headwaters or that initial development, it was, the master plan was massive landscaping, but it never got planted. Right now it's crab apple trees up to Bell Bank, and then some trees with, you can see where the perimeter of the edging is, but none of the plants are really yet. So right now it's just getting mowed. The grass, it's irrigated now, the irrigation works. Once we took ownership of it last winter, and now, so at least it's getting irrigated, the grass is green, it's getting mowed, that's kind of where it's at now. And then the plan farther down, the rest of it's just tall grass, and I don't believe there's even any trees going down towards
We don't-
Lila.
If we don't have a policy in place today that would guide those landscaping decisions, is it more kind of situational based on what happens at the time the project goes in?
It basically just gets designed when the landscaping plan gets put into the project.
Seems like we should have some sort of a landscape master plan for future development that just guides these decisions, that we know, here's what the maintenance is going to be, so that we're not just one-offing it, but, I know it's way off scope from where we are, but seems like it's needed.
But it's, I mean, you know, like, too far off topic, but I mean, there's other spaces, not like that up at a road, but I think of, you guys just replanted trees in the islands at Lakes Memorial Park parking lot. We should have thrown another one in, just where the one mature tree is, right? It's missing, it's still on that island. But I think,
That's phase two.
is it?
Yeah, that's next year.
Oh, perfect. Is it where we do this Sumac down there?
Yes, that's all getting removed and trees are getting pushed.
So is that being guided by a policy though?
That's being guided by, it looks horrible, and Public Works is finding ways to make it look nice, but also easily maintained, because we're already down there with mowers, there's irrigation available, and the wood mulch where you can maintain it in those small containers. So we're taking small chunks in those areas to try to get rid of some, make turf grass and trees, and then leave mulch to make it look nice in some other areas, but they're more manageable areas instead of 3 miles of wood mulch, you know, so it's kind of finding those spots to make something look nice.
I mean, to your point about maintenance policy, overarching, I mean, because there's other areas like that, I mean, the boulevard out here, leaving this space, that when we get to a place of deciding on this, it's in the context of here's our overarching policy that will then guide what we do, whether it's sweep a concrete pad twice a year or, you know, spray weeds and rock or whatever. So how do we do that?
Well, I would argue the maintenance is already, we can steal that right from Lucius's presentation tonight. It talks about the maintenance expectations. Like you say, if it's concrete or whatever, right? But I think, are you asking for a landscaping policy citywide in every situation? Maybe we could use this as a
I don't,
test run.
yeah, well, and
And learn
also,
from it, and then we could expand it to.
yeah, I was also just trying to piece together, how did we get here, and then what do we need to do so that we don't keep redoing this, as recognizing we're gonna have a plan, hopefully here at the end of this, to redo existing, but then we're a growing city, so let's just make sure we've got something in place at some point to address that. Here's the landscaping standard. Similar conversation about, street lighting, right, on what decorative lights go in.
So I like the concept of dialing back some of this landscape so you don't have that maintenance, but still have some amenities. Trees, wherever there's trees that we should replace them. The idea of having tree-lined boulevards, I mean, in our downtown study, it talked about having trees and treescape and green space. Trees, not that much maintenance. Turf, what Public Works did out front here and changed that, it looks much cleaner. It just looks really, really good, and to have that combination, I know that's not as quiet of an environment as on the street, but that turf on Greenway looks, I mean, it's mowed, looks decent, and it's kind of that combination somewhere where we're still having some aesthetically nice looking things, but not just built out totally like the original plan.
I would.
And the other piece would be, and I don't know, Dave, how you feel like this, about this, but rock as opposed to mulch. they just redid a roundabout, South County Road 4, that has the gray slate rock, just really nice, pleasing. And that's gonna be there, obviously you have to do a little weeding, maybe some pre-emergence stuff to make it so it's not, to keep the weeds down. But that's gonna be there for 20, 30 years, it's rock. It's not gonna mulch even after a year. If you put mulch in your home, after a year, it starts fading out, it doesn't look that good. So the rock is something I think, but I know that upfront cost is more, maybe long-term it's not, so much, you have to replace it out.
Yeah, in the public works review, that was recommended over wood mulch, the rock mulch. Just to his point, where when we spray and you do weed control, you can see what you're doing
Yeah.
there, you know what's a plant and what's not a plant, just looks cleaner. And to your point as well, you throw mulch down in June and by September, it looks like it's 3 years old already. So it would make it look like it's new longer, or at least a lot cleaner, where when you spend all that time throwing mulch down and all that, the dollar amount too, and then by the end of summer, it's like, okay, well, it doesn't look any better than it did when we started doing it.
Okay, good heavy rain, you can wash your mulch away,
Yeah.
get it down well.
I agree with Blake. I like the idea of downsizing where we can. So I think some of the recommendation is that, to your point on some of those small medians that just haven't taken well, let's consider concreting that. But then perhaps in certain areas adding some concrete strips just to break it up a little bit. And then I also liked just you have a practical solution for the trees that don't have irrigation, let's do some sort of stormwater reclamation. I think that makes sense. I also think, again, there's gonna be spots where you're gonna want the full showcase, and so let's look to have that in policy somewhere of where that is, and then other places where it's just a step back because there's lesser traveled and maybe not where we need to have the same level of showcase.
I completely agree with Councilmember Roberts. The trees, I think we told Lucius that multiple times, yes, you gotta put all the trees back, it just adds, I mean, relatively zero maintenance to it. Once you get it going and it looks great, it just adds character to, like those concrete pads too, like the banner poles, but even up on 12, they put the landscaping and then Washington County or MnDOT put one big huge 4-foot sign that's jammed right in the forester grass. I mean, that's the spots where you say, well, let's just extend the concrete past the sign so you don't have grass and, landscape growing inside the sign. It's those kind of spots too, where like the safety concern. It's not, like, look horrible if you concrete the whole thing, but there's some spots where, you're not doing anything, you're just wasting landscaping by having it buried up by the sign.
Crazy maintenance.
We have, the downtown roundabout as unpedestrian friendly as that can be. It's heavily pedestrian trafficked, and so I would say, that the medians around there should be of a nicer design or a more intricate design than I would say the roundabouts on 97 and 61. That's high-speed traffic. It's not, the pedestrian facilities there are different, and so maybe something that is less maintenance, less intricate to maintain would make sense, just again, given the speed of traffic going through.
A little more than grass.
Yeah, right. So a place that would be less intricate, less expensive, a little easier to maintain. And focus more intricate designs in the areas where you have more pedestrian traffic.
I do like the area, that city-owned spot on the north end of the downtown to add some parking, little extra downtown parking, those spaces there. Whether it's comes out of this project cost-wise, I don't know if that's.
Is this the adjacent to Kodiak?
No, on the north side,
yeah.
Town Square.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little known that's a
City-owned.
city-owned and public parking, because Town Square just uses it as their parking lot. There should be some education there that people know that they can park there, which is a block away from Lakeside Park. Right. You guys have 25 public parking spots that a lot of people don't know they have, and you can almost double that by just rearing on the other side. That's a lot of spots.
Should we put some percentage up to that effect? Let's put this.
Parking provided by your 4-6 city council.
Right. No, I Yeah, my hometown, we had probably 3 or 4 municipal lots, signs,
That's the public parking signs.
To be really honest, I bet the people that work at Town Square and park there do not even know that that's public park. They just assume that's, oh, well, we just had a special event permit and they're having their event in that lot. I think they assume that that's their lot.
We know that's for sure the case at the gun building, yes.
What was it?
The city municipal lot, but, to the, not Town Square, but what's the Plaza building,
Yeah.
right? That's a city municipal lot.
Yeah.
People don't know that.
So how much is it on that northwest corner is city lot, hopefully, or just that little bit on the south?
Goes up to the building.
Okay. But the north side of the building, that's theirs.
Yes, so take their building and everything north is there, so that lot on, the parking on the back side of the building and then the north lot with the entire south lot in between on that corner.
This trail,
Trailhead parking.
need to make it bigger.
But yeah, it's just a green space now, I don't know, we were talking, Lucius, like, yeah, we come here and mow it and it's easy, just beat up and, get that, near the other side and then park right up against it would get rid of a spot that needs mow and irrigate and these deeper spots, so it's kind of a double in there.
That sounds kind of where I was kind of honing in on these kind of design options, kind of laying out each, willing to entertain any and all of them, but I was really looking at kind of some of that simplification. I think there's opportunities to reduce that amount, kind of improve the maintainability, kind of adding some of those concrete panels, and just kind of cleaning things up, incorporating kind of that stormwater feature on 7th Street, and maybe looking at that kind of mirroring, imaging the landscape across. That was kind of, I see the kind of the bookmarks of Broadway. It has its kind of design standard is set through all that original design. The nice thing was is it was consistent kind of that whole way through. And so kind of using that kind of probably around 35, kind of more heavy and showy. And then again, when you get down to Lake Street, more heavy and showy. And then maybe it is a simplification. I don't know if it necessarily means just trees and turf in those middle areas, maybe it is.
There's some sections that have some length, and having that broken up with some of either the catmint or those grasses might, just from a design standpoint, make sense, because there's some sections that have a fair, I think some length. I don't know, not having any, breaking that whole center section, like between 12th and Lake, down to nothing but trees and turf or concrete, I don't know.
Too simple.
Be interesting to see what that cost would look like, right?
So the only landscaping between 12th and 4th is that tree trench or those 3 locus.
Is that it?
Yeah, it's the only time where the turn lane is where it kind of bumps out.
You can tell how much I've paid attention to that, so that disregard.
Well, I think where it seems kind of heavy and we're missing a lot of things is from 35 to 12. That there, we're missing a lot there. And
Yeah.
That's where you're thinking,
Yeah.
because that is, seems like a long stretch.
Yep,
Maybe that's where you're thinking. Those Carl Foresters, they're like weeds themselves. I mean, they do well, they look nice, they just.
yeah. And if there's options that are, if that is a better selection than some of the others, then obviously let's pick that, but.
Sure. I think part of it too, like Lucius, to his point, I mean, if we irrigate it, and I had that as a comment, that if we're gonna do any landscape, it has to have irrigation, because you're gonna keep it alive. So the only one that doesn't have that irrigation is that one on 7, but the recommendation for the plan would be is let's get the irrigation ready, and so we can irrigate the boulevards, and we can irrigate the medians, so we're gonna invest in it, let's make sure they stay alive, you're gonna give it a lot better chance of surviving if you're giving it water. And maybe if it's landscape, you're not having to give it every week, you're just hitting it on when it's dry time, you know, I'm not throwing on somebody else, but, you know, we wouldn't let it go like that. It's here nor there.
Yeah.
Were you doing anything with the roundabout, like, Robert, I see something in your notes about that?
Yep, so there's, I think it was 4, maybe 5 trees were planted in there originally, evergreen trees. And they have grown, they've survived well, but they've grown into each other, kind of starting to mesh together. And so in the middle, maybe not visible, but there will start to be some die-off as they crowd each other.
Yeah.
And then the comment I heard was maybe it'd be better to thin those back out or simplify that. Just thinking of the holiday season, unfortunately right around the corner, but kind of putting up Christmas lights on those trees, giving the crews more space to do that. And just trying to stave off some of the disease potential for something dying in the middle.
So what does that mean? Taking out these current trees, you just trim them back?
We moved on or?
Look at the spacing, see we remove 1 or 2 and kind of let the rest continue to flourish, or if need be, maybe take 3 of them out, replant them, then you get kind of a staggered effect of the trees.
Yeah, they look nice, but I don't know why they planted them right on top close. Yeah, they're just all intertwined now.
Looks better when they're small. Everybody forgets how big they get, so they look great.
They're tiny, let's put them 1 foot apart.
Is there any opportunity, for years we've talked about a monument sign, welcome to Forest Lake, to do something at the south roundabout that's similar to Lake, that is almost like that wall, you know, where one says Lake Street, the other says Broadway? Is it an opportunity to do something down there? Would MinDOT allow that? If we're looking at doing this and there is still desires for some type of monument sign, I don't know, just throwing it out there for conversation.
I would be interested to see what they had said about that, because we were just talking about before the meeting that they don't even know how to get the trees in there anymore, and I don't, the Lake Broadway concrete wall in there might have happened before
Last.
a bunch of people started ski jumping through roundabouts. But I can see
It's a
even that,
prevention of, it's just a natural prevention of that.
and maybe it's a speed thing, maybe they know that one's at 30 miles an hour, but maybe at a 45 or 40, whatever that one is, that they're not gonna let you put. And then that would look cooler, but I would highly, I mean, it's something you can ask Dimitri and ask MinDOT if that's other landscape rules of what's allowed and what's not allowed in roundabouts, but.
They didn't know what's allowed.
Yeah, because that's like going into Hugo, it's ways off the road, isn't it? So right into the railroad bed there almost. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, it'd be helpful just to know that even for future, if we ever want to modify Goodview or Fenway or whatever in the future, to know what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
You know, because you might have turf in Fenway and 10 years from now, go, you know what, we should do something with that because we want development happens that way, and it's, you know, it's replaced, it's, you know, what you can and can't do.
So I think we kind of
Do you have
get that
enough direction, you
consensus,
think?
kind of,
Okay.
yeah, kind of hybridizing, kind of simplifying and moving forward with that.
Excellent.
So we'll take that back, and work on some sketch designs and costs, and bring that back for the next workshop.
For next, I don't know if this is the next one or the meeting after, are we thinking about some recommendations on the phasing of the replacement? That this is not a 1-year replacement, that this is multiple years? Is that part of the phasing plan? Is what kind of, getting a recommendation from you, what kind of goes together and how we might bundle and make this a multi-year project?
Yeah,
Is that
kind of the next workshop is really kind of like, here's the master plan, kind of like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do, and then we can break that into the phases when we understand those costs and kind of like what's the real budget we wanna dedicate.
So on Broadway, the county delayed the, I don't know, repairs, whatever the word, when is that gonna be, next year now, or when is that gonna be?
Supposed to be next year, done before 4th of July. I think, I can't remember if they changed that now or just wouldn't be around the 4th of July, but you're gonna go out for bids this fall in hopes that they can get an early start next spring.
And I don't know if it makes sense to do it at the same time or not, probably not.
You want to
Too
do
much
it
delay,
after.
they're out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the hope would be that they get out by the 4th of July, we do whatever we decide to do for that project in the fall, get that all planted in the fall, which is a great time of year to get trees and plants in and then let them go dormant.
Excellent, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Any other points of feedback, council? Alright. So, Christina, you had on our, on the agenda, consideration of the project list. I don't know if you had anything in particular you wanted to talk about on that, or if you just wanted to kind of raise it to council's attention again and.
So Mayor, like every work session meeting, I just put that on there as a reminder, as you just heard, at the next meeting. And the one after that, our plan for the next 2 months is to have Lucius come back and continue to work on this project. But just provided it as I do at every work session. So looking if there's anything that folks think have risen to the top or how they'd like us to prioritize or, again, just continue to focus on budget stuff and whatnot, so.
There's a couple things, like that park commission ordinance, should that be completed now?
Yeah, that one just got done. Sorry, I didn't update it.
Oh, that's cool. And what about the special events permit?
That has not been done.
It's not-
That is in the pipeline along with the ATV, UTV, golf cart ordinance that I'm working on right now.
I just had a couple of residents ask about that.
Yeah, it's in the works, it's coming to you guys soon.
Do you think that could be something with all the licensing and all that, something that would be first of the year, or is that too soon, or where do you think that?
I think that we'll have it to you all for consideration later this fall.
Okay.
And then it's gonna take some fine tuning, for you guys to decide how you actually wanna implement it. So probably early next year, we could have it fully in effect if all goes well.
I mean, and that season doesn't really start till spring,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
since
Well, I'm just thinking of
snow,
access to the lake on UTVs.
that is true. That
And
is
dry fishing and stuff, that's why.
We do it anyways.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah, Chief was telling me he and his wife were going to the old log cabin and they cut through North Shore. And he said for the first time, he just realized how many folks are truly just driving their ATVs and their UTVs everywhere. And it just hadn't occurred to him before, he was probably seeing it, but not seeing it until this discussion came up, so,
I've been asked about that many times here too lately.
yeah.
You wanna get that done?
What, Veterans Memorial, where are we at with that?
Well, it's kind of an ongoing thing.
No, I think it's specific about the park.
I know that they've been meeting, I think the intention is that they would be more efficient to do the project all at once. And so there's about a $250,000 I think they need to raise. It was the latest estimate I heard, and the hope is that once they do that, combined with money from the city and the grants and stuff from the state, that maybe it would be a late 25, early 26 project. Were you at the last Veterans Committee meeting, and
Yeah,
is that where they're still at?
there's one on Wednesday or Thursday this week. That'll be the updated of their task to get us all their costs. And then Civil will get their costs together, try to get one pretty close estimated cost for their presentation on 14th. So
But we were gonna be splitting it up and just doing the water main once and then the rest of it another time, right? So,
No, but
got
I
it.
think what they've been told is we're not gonna start anything until we have the funding to do it. We don't wanna move the line if there's the money and then we're on $100,000 for no reason to us.
Ridge light up. What do we do this year for the ridge light? We decide.
So Member Roberts is,
Well, we have to get some funding, there's requests, so.
I can probably make that one completed because we did talk about that.
I think that, just based on last year's response, I don't think it'll be a problem. I've already reached out to some people, but
And did we decide just the bridge at downtown, right? Yeah.
Both sides.
Both sides.
both sides, but the one side is not a full
We're both full this year, that's what
Well,
was
next
approved.
year it'll be full.
No, this year.
Oh.
That's what was approved in May, to make them both full on both sides, and then in 25, the city would start paying for it. Because we didn't have funding for it in 24.
One more year.
I was like, what's that raise?
One more year of fundraising.
So it's in the 25 budget, it's in there earmarked for bridge lighting for 2025, but it's not in 2024.
And what was the number? I can't remember. We set it to 8,000 or something?
Yeah, just shy of $9,000, but next year it'll be, I think we budgeted $10,000 just for if it still costs more or less. So we already own 3/4 of the lights. We buy those last pieces and then we install. I think it actually drops down to like 77,000 maybe if you really put up here now.
And city's budgeting for 2025.
Correct.
As the fire chief, maybe we could use a fire truck, but he didn't like that idea. To be able to get up there would be perfect.
What is Health Up?
They had reached out to us early this year and they wanted to come to a meeting and we had it scheduled and I think it was like the only thing on the agenda back in June when you had a bunch of other meetings, so we ended up canceling. And I reached out to them about the next month and I've never heard back. So it's one that came more from the public and we're just kind of waiting to hear from them.
There are obviously a lot of older ones that you don't know where we are.
Well, we can take them off then if they're not important.
Just
Or if you don't remember me.
candidates to come off the list maybe?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, I was just trying to remember what some of the stuff was. And I kind of suspected that some of it was done or
Yeah.
close to it, so. What's the county attorney presentation?
They had sent a letter offering to come out and give a presentation too. I can't remember why that one hasn't happened, but maybe just never heard from them again.
How about all the dead trees in town?
We did put 25,000 into the budget for next year to remove the emerald ash borer. But we haven't created a policy around it or anything.
So I've been working through a updated tree policy, or ordinance, so we already have a nuisance pest ordinance in code, but it's from 1978. So we were gonna update that one to 2024. We took League of Minnesota Cities template and then kind of worked with other cities around, stealing some ideas off of them to come up with an ordinance for that. Amanda's reviewing that right now to put an ordinance form because I'm not smart enough to put an ordinance form. And we also have to create an actual right-of-way tree policy on top of that, so that's the part we can change from time to time, the ordinance, which we don't want to have a locked in, but for what it sounds like, the DNR is gonna release funding in late October, early November for more EAP treatment. So we need to have an updated ordinance and a policy and basically to qualify for it. And that those grants will cover tree inventories and cost for removal or replanting, so.
Are those grants for individuals as well as municipalities?
Yeah, these ones are still municipal, but you can use them for right of way, and if you don't have right of way, then there's like a shade tree one too that you can use to offset for homeowners as well.
Oh,
So
that's good.
I think they'd like to give the money to the cities to let them deal with it instead of trying to let homeowners all put in individual applications, so hopefully we get that, hopefully they pool a lot of money there and we can get, and step number one, we can just get an inventory and know what we're dealing with, and get a general idea of how much this is gonna cost. Like Christine's point, we have 25,000 in there, kind of seed money next year to start on this.
Do you see that as used for inventory or for removal?
Well, I'm hoping that you're gonna have a grant match or something with this grant, you might be able to double your money or triple your money or, I think the inventory prep, I think you're better off doing an inventory first to see what the city is responsible for, right away, parkland and city owned property to get a grasp of what we're dealing with. I mean, obviously you're not gonna get them all taken down next year, but it may help guide budget discussions for 26, 27 beyond, and say, okay, we have an estimated, let's pick a number, $300,000 worth of trees. Okay, well, let's break that out over the next 5 years, and we do $60,000 a year to do that, and then if you keep getting grants or stuff like that, this will help offset that. There's always discussion too, if we want to hire a dedicated specific tree company to be a licensed remover here, then they would give discounts to homeowners too on private properties. I've seen some cities do that when you name your tree removal company as the official.
I was just gonna ask you at that point, RFP.
Yeah, you would do that, and, you know, just like anything else, you'd have them, they would be the ones removing our trees, and then we're doing the residents, but at a discounted rate. You know, how much are you gonna charge us either per tree or per caliper tree or?
And they are only an option, right? Like, we aren't limiting, we're not limiting homeowners' ability to go to another provider, we're just giving an option that,
They would be our only option if we
yes.
entered with them, but then for us entering a contract with them, they would give, you know, a discount or a break to residents. You know, they wouldn't have to make use where they wanted, but you can advertise and say, they'll give you an estimate and they're using, you get a city discount. I think that's something we want to explore at some point, to see what kind of a discount you can get by having somebody do it, and try to give a break to residents, because it's horrible to drive around town, it's bad. It's just gonna keep getting worse.
Are there any trees out there that don't get diseased anymore? It seems like one after the other. Now the oaks are getting, well, there's some kind of a, well, there's some kind of a worm now too, you're talking about the other night.
You come up with a maple syrup eating bug for maple trees.
Yeah.
We're in trouble.
There's one out in New York, I was just gonna say I've heard for maple trees that it's starting out in New York.
So what do you plant? What do you replant?
Apparently those honey locusts.
Yeah. Buckthorn?
Oh,
There's So hopefully in October, we'll have something together for that tree policy, so we can kind of queue that up to be able to apply for that grant.
Sign code updates, that's a problem.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
So from our discussion, I'm kind of hearing priorities again, Lucius would come back, special event ordinance, UTV, ATV ordinance, tree ordinance and policy. And I know that cannabis stuff that Amanda had been working on, obviously, as that progresses. Does that seem like the right focus from this list?
I think so. Any other topics or discussion out of this?
One thing I've been hearing quite a bit about is, a lot of these older homes, companies are coming and buying them and they rent them out, you know. Is there any kind of a policy that I know of in the city that kind of protects the renters there? Because you don't know if they're bad or good, or should we have something that, maybe some kind of inspection process? Just like to hear what everybody thinks about that, because I keep getting asked about it. And it's getting to be more and more too, with it's not just an owner renting out his house, they're being sold and then rented out. And the people buying them, they might be an LLC or whatever, some kind of a company, you know, so I think it's something we should maybe look at or at least discuss it.
I mean, that will be a very expensive thing to undertake. We're not gonna be able to do, rental inspections and licensing and all that kind of stuff with our staff, but, there's certainly cities that do that and devote resources to that.
They do some kind of a permitting process, but,
Isn't there also, I'm not sure exactly the problem to solve, but there's a smaller scope option, which is the short-term rental, the Airbnb. We haven't put anything on the books specific around short-term rental, and we certainly have had issues, police chief, Brett has brought a couple, problem properties to our attention, and we, I think that's not quite as, that's not quite as tenuous on staff as a broader kind of rental policy, but
maybe something we should.
It's something to talk about, just to answer some questions for people who've been asking.
Yeah, we've taken some good strides this last year around code enforcement, whether it's a long-term rental, that's short, or just a homeowner that doesn't cut their grass. I mean, we're finally making some strides, I think, as a city in that respect. You know, you could have bad apples, and eat one of those.
Yeah, there has been some progress.
Do we have a way of getting from the county tax records of properties, single home residents that are owned by LLCs or corporate ownership of single family homes?
It's all public information.
Certainly ask.
Certainly not all Airbnb or VRBO properties are held by an LLC, but it's certainly an indication that it's not, held by owner occupied. And it might be a place, I'm just trying to understand scope and scale, because part of the challenge that you're referring to is just, it limits access to,
Right.
individual buyers. Might be
And I don't know
interesting
if
just
you could do it just for single family homes, or you'd also be doing all of your apartments as well, you know? I don't know enough about it,
Well,
except that, know the places that do it.
Apartment, at least some internal control, too, there's a little bit different story.
So maybe the question I need to find out first is, can you do it just on single family homes? Is that's your concern?
That's why we
I
have
mean,
that
usually,
discussion.
when I've heard of rental inspections, it's all rentals, that's what I'm not sure of, but I could.
And I think maybe us having the discussion of what is the problem we're trying to solve might help narrow that in. Are we concerned about investor properties raising home values and there's that? Or is it more of a code enforcement challenge, which we could tackle without doing this particular rental license?
I get calls from residents at least 2-3 times a week with concerns about houses in their neighborhoods being used as Vrbo's or Airbnbs. And they're
Specific to Vrbo's and Airbnbs.
right, so the short-term rentals. And and I have to tell them, we don't have anything in place right now. Their concern is that these are party houses. Typically, they're on the lake, so there's folks renting them for weekends for bachelor and bachelorette parties, or whatever it might be, wedding parties, or just girls' weekends.
I've heard that question too.
So that's the concern I hear a lot from residents, and it's a question I get a lot, so.
It'd be interesting to have that tied to actual, to see if that actually results in actual, if that is happening, we would expect also
Noise complaints.
noise complaints or police complaints to spike.
Mhm.
Yeah, it'd be good to know.
Sure.
I'm trying to get at data we could look at that would help us to measure how many we have. I mean, frankly, just a search on VRBO and Airbnb of our zip code will also tell us the number of properties that are listed. Interesting that you get that many complaints, Jen.
It's quite a few. I mean, I've been surprised, and I anticipate they'll slow down as we get into cooler months here in the winter months. But maybe not. I mean, if people are having nice fishing parties and snowmobile parties and whatnot on the lake, maybe they'll continue. But
Do you find that it's the same callers, is it the same properties?
no, it's kind of all over. Bay Drive and North Shore and South Shore. It's from all over the place. I should have started a little chart with
Is there a way
tracking them.
maybe to track that
Yeah,
a
I
little
can
bit?
start that.
That would be good.
Yep.
Must be all the parties your renters are throwing over there in Bay Drive.
Right, one right there, one there right now.
Just a question, we can discuss it along the way. I don't know what the answer is.
Anything else? All right, we're at the end of our planned agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Entertain a motion, or you will make?
Oh, I said I want to entertain a motion. You made a motion. And then you seconded it.
I'll take it back.
As long as Jolene has it.
Go somewhere, Julian.
What's that?
This clicking thing.